The following story may not be appropriate for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. Welcome to Whisperwood Stories. Happy Halloween! Today we're going to continue and finish the story that I wrote for you this spooky season. So without further ado, let's begin. Express Static Finale. I simply sat there for a while, in the dark, unsure of what I could do. On a whim, I ate a little, rested a little, but I was too anxious to do either effectively. I sighed. Carl may not have given me a flashlight, but at least he gave me snacks. The solid air of the sewers hummed like a cave, a man-made cave of uniform, concrete tunnels. It felt like a prison, or maybe a casket. It was hard to see more than an outline of it, but I took the circular metal device out of the backpack. This little thing was supposed to get us home? To the mainframe, I muttered. It clicked as I turned it over. It almost felt heavier than I remembered. Even with my examination, I couldn't understand exactly what it was. He called it an injector. In a sudden glare that hurt my eyes, a light came through the crack in the rubble. It was pointed off to my right. Had Carl finally found a way over? "Carl?" I said, holding my hand up to shield my eyesight. There was no reply. "Hello? Did you find a way around?" I said. Then the light turned fully onto me. I felt that burning, singeing static headache, and only then did I know that it was not Carl's flashlight. There was a sound, frantic and scraping. It only became clear what it was after a moment. It was clawing its way through the crack. I stood up quickly, heart racing as I turned and ran off into the dark tunnels. That spotlight gave me a little leeway to see farther down, but it wasn't long before I lost that advantage. I tripped almost immediately. A painful slam as I fell over onto concrete. Something skittered from my backpack as I fell. I paused. I knew that sound. I'd heard it 100 times before. A dropped phone. I searched the ground for it. My hand soon found the familiar, if abused, rectangle that could be my only savior. But a different thought occurred to me. My phone had a screen. I had been carrying it this whole time. You idiot. What could that mean? Fred could... could control any screen in its domain, couldn't it? My grip tightened on it. Holding it felt like holding a writhing snake, something that was bound to whip around and bite if I didn't let go. But what else could I do? I looked out into the unknowable dark. I couldn't wait to be saved. With hesitation, I pressed the power button. The phone flickered onto its normal lock screen. A picture of my husband and I in Hawaii 5 years ago, though the new web of cracks were covering his face. No connection, half battery. I watched it for a moment, waiting for Fred's face to appear and laugh, but it didn't. Maybe it was safe after all. I turned on the flashlight function. I could finally see what was in front of me. The sewer tunnels had widened into a greater channel, and the sidewalks ended ahead. I imagined myself plunging into the water head first if I had kept running earlier. I walked to the edge, It wasn't a long drop, and the water didn't look dirty. Clear as crystal, in fact. It was then that I realized there hadn't been any sort of smell at all. No people, I thought. It caused my gut to twist. I was already soaked from the collapse anyway, so I sat on the edge of the sidewalk and lowered myself into the water. It was freezing cold and about waist deep. I waded through its gentle current with my phone light held high, bobbing side to side. It wasn't long before I came to another dreaded split in the path. Left, right, and forward. The tunnel seemed endless. All of it looked the same. I tried to triangulate myself in relation to where we had been separated, but running in the dark had disoriented any chance of that. The path on my right had a slight difference, however. A large section of wall went inward, a door within that. There had to be a room beyond it. I decided on that direction. There might be something to help me inside, like Carl had suggested. I was thankful to climb out of the water. I shivered as I stared at the door in question. The door was quite rusted. Its scraping, small movements echoed into the dark as I pushed at it. It seemed to be unlocked, but was stuck. You know what? Fine, I said. I took a step back, leaned, then kicked forward with all I could muster. The door shot open and hit the inner wall with a crack. I smiled triumphantly, until, that is, I began to fall from the force. I tumbled backwards into the freezing water. With the grace of a turtle flipped over onto its shell, I scrambled, then pushed myself up in frustration. Guess I should have packed a damn bathing suit, I spat. Phone light forward, I recovered and climbed back up, stepping inside the room. The room seemed to be some kind of control center. There were consoles against the back wall with multitudes of readers, levers, and buttons. None of them seemed to be on. None of them seemed to have screens. I couldn't imagine what any of it was really for. This whole place seemed more like a shell than a functioning city anyway. There was a rusted fence behind the consoles. Through the tangling squares of it, I could see some sort of large machinery. There were shelves of equipment against the walls, some uniforms, miscellaneous tools, but there was nothing that seemed of much use to me. I soon found what I was really looking for. A tunnel map was spray painted onto the wall by a stencil. I went over to it, then saw the hole. The map was faded in some places. Only parts of it were visible. Still, based on the yellow "You Are Here" block title, I traced where I had come from. I could see a routing of tunnels where Carl must have gone. At the very top, the word "exit," but the tunnels leading there were too faded to understand. Still, there was hope. The map showed this little side room too, and that there was another one in Carl's path. He'd probably seen this map then. There were converging tunnels up ahead, but they were farther than I might have thought. There was still a path. That was better than nothing. Middle, right, I mumbled. The rest of the map was faded. If Carl wasn't there, though, I could backtrack and start calling for him. About time I had some luck.
He's a traitor. He always runs.
The voice that had interrupted me was accented by a creepy giggle. I turned. A silhouette was peering into the room. Something like those static ghosts I had seen before. The shape was so vague that I couldn't discern any identifying details. Traitor? Did it mean Carl? I had the injector. He couldn't leave without me. I shifted nervously. That movement alone caused the figure to turn and dart away. I could hear footsteps and giggling bouncing against the concrete walls. I followed. In the tunnels, The figure, vaguely glowing, peered at me now from a far corner. The corner of the middle pathway. The giggle chimed again as the figure ran off down the center path. I had to get back into the water to reach my destination. The frigid river churned around me. When I was approaching the middle path, I saw a figure only for a moment before it went around another corner, down a right side opening. Middle, right. I clambered up onto the raised sidewalk there. By the time I got up, I was beginning to feel the exhaustion. I should have used my gym membership more often. That was when the burning light hit my back. I stopped walking, glancing backward. It was the spotlight creature, coming from where I had originally been, if distant. There wasn't just one now. "Carl, where are you?" I whispered, walking the rest of the way and turning the right side corner. I had to eventually go right again. When I came to the end of my map knowledge there, the static ghost and I diverged. I watched as it went left. The glowing form lit the concrete as it stopped deep in the dark. It simply stood there. Was that the right way? It had gone the correct way so far. Still, it was clearly one of those static ghosts. I glanced behind me. The spotlights would reach me any minute now. There wasn't much time to decide. "Carl?" I called out to my right. My voice echoed down into the dark tunnels, but there was no response. None, that is, except for the light that flickered on. I knew at once this too was not Carl's light. I was surrounded.
Shit.
Behind me, I could see the spotlights bobbing as they came closer. Ahead, even more spotlights. The only way forward was left now, where the static ghost still stood. I cursed again and ran to the left. I could only hope that Carl was okay, pray to whatever god there was of this place that I would see him again soon. I couldn't just leave him behind. I swallowed. E was the only god to pray to here. The creatures hissed as the light hit my back. I picked up my speed. The burning spotlights all converged on me like an opera singer beginning her solo. My own lungs felt like I'd been singing all day, paper thin and ready to tear. I closed the distance to the ghost. I could see something else up ahead now. My phone's flashlight showed a ladder against a back wall, going up into the dark ceiling. Was this finally the way out? The ghost climbed up it, and with one last look at the spotlights behind me, I followed. I could only hope that Carl would make it out. The metal rungs were cold under my hands. It was too dark to see exactly where the ladder was going. I stared up with concentration, but eventually lost sight of the ghost after it gave one last giggle. I was breathing hard the farther I climbed. After a while, I glanced down to check on the spotlights tailing me, but I didn't see anything. In fact, all I saw was the same strange darkness that was above me, a void of distance. I started to climb back down to try and see if they were still following, but even after I expected to be able to see the bottom, the air around me had a violent hum to it now, a resonance like a subliminal TV station. I stopped climbing, and instead used the flashlight to look around me more. There was simply nothing. No city, no sewer tunnels, not even a wall behind the ladder. Claustrophobia clawed at me. I felt simultaneously surrounded by the dark and threatened by its openness. Where was I? I hugged close to the ladder as I tried to calm my frantic breathing. That was when I realized that there could only be one thing behind this.
I know you're out there. Just come out already.
I called. Other sources of my own voice seemed to call the same words back at me. There was one last, haunting moment before it finally appeared.
Oh, what's the matter, Elaine? Don't like heights?
In a flash as bright as the sun, a massive screen flickered on in front of me. The size of it made it hard to tell just how far away it was, but it seemed pretty close. The light of the screen exposed the rest of the room. To my right and left, I could see distant walls, but above and below were just dark. It seemed to be an impossibly large cubic chamber. My ladder simply hovered in the center of it. Fred's massive face smiled at me.
I'm glad you two decided to come to my tower. Welcome to the mainframe.
Countless other smaller screens flashed on around me. Some were filled with Fred's diabolical face, some with the visage of the tower, with its red light blinking. The TVs were lined up side by side. They covered the rest of the space on the nearby walls. It felt like a giant audience. Each face seemed to move of its own accord and listen intently to the larger.
I've gotta say, Elaine, thanks for keeping your phone on you at all times like a good citizen. It really helped me keep an eye on you. It was so hard to keep quiet.
An identical visage of Fred's face appeared on the phone then, and in panic, I threw it down into the endless dark. A cartoon call emitted from the phone Fred as he fell, but I didn't hear it hit the bottom.
Cute, but too late. It's all over now,
Fred continued.
I've had my fun, so it's time to stop playing with my food. What do you think? Would you rate your experience 5 stars? You'll get a free coupon for your next visit.
I was too exhausted to feel afraid anymore. No fear of this place, not of Fred. All I felt was hollow, as if this strange place had finally absorbed it all. I continued climbing in a desperate attempt to do something. My hands scraped painfully against the metal. Fred just watched in amusement.
Oh, the folly. To think that you can solve your problems with blunt force. More likely, though, those problems are gonna solve you. I'm glad at least you're trying. You didn't even try back home.
Shut up! I yelled. There was something above me, a long catwalk. I clambered up onto its metal grating, and it swung under my feet. I didn't seem to be in a different position in the room despite how far I climbed.
There, happy now? You can stand while you watch my final presentation. Don't ever say I'm not generous.
I went to the edges of the catwalk, but it was no good. Only a railing and long drop into the dark. When I walked back, the ladder was gone.
Fine,
I said in defeat.
You win. What do you even want with us? I thought that would be obvious by now. To punish you. To punish all who contributed to what I am. But mostly, to punish my one creator. I guess you could call what I aim to do pressure.
These simple words fell like a weight on the room. Fred had spoken flatly, in the opposite of his usually playful tone. A heavy mechanism echoed. It sounded like great gears working behind the walls. Metal blaring, clattering. I watched as something was lowered from the infinite shadow above. Something hoisted by rusting chains. A cage. Between its hefty, rotting bars, I saw him. Carl, beaten and ragged, seeming confused and lost.
At first, everyone thought the world could be better by my hand. Or at least, that's what they pretended. But all they really wanted was money. There's something funny about money. You can't eat it when you starve. There's only one real thing of value in this world. Revenge.
Fred laughed, then a mad sound that rang in his hundreds of voices as the digital faces contorted.
Carl, are you alright?
I called over the sound. He looked up groggily. His face was drawn but began to focus as he saw me. He snapped upright and grabbed the bars. The cage swung with the motion.
Elaine, do you still have it?
I held my backpack straps tighter. I have it.
There's only one chance. You have to throw it. Throw it to me now.
I retrieved the metal object, the injector, and hefted it. The metal thing was heavy, but I could lift it. I eyed this distance with a dark nervousness. I thought of what the ghost said.
What are you waiting for?
Carl called.
You can't reach the screen from here. I have to do it.
Carl's cage was equally in between me and the large screen. It could be just close enough, but I couldn't tell. There would be only one chance to do this. All my life, I had only trusted myself. In order to escape, we had to work as a team. Fred, before this moment, had been distracted by his own laughter. Once he heard what Carl said, though, he stopped.
What is that? What are you doing?
I lifted the injector with both hands, testing its weight over my head. Now,
throw it!
Carl repeated. His arms just fit between the ragged bars. My breath quickened. Leaning back, I set myself and with all of my might, threw the injector. It careened from my grasp like an Olympic discus. I was forced to catch the catwalk's railing or tumble over it. As it swayed dangerously, I watched the injector fly. It caught the light of the countless screens. A smile slowly bloomed on my face. The arc was right. It was going right towards the cage. Then my smile fell. It was falling too soon. I hadn't thrown it far enough. Carl seemed to realize this. He ran himself against the wall of the cage again, and it swung forwards just so. At the top of its swing, he dove to the floor of the cage and reached for it. A cry reverberated sharply. The metal thing was in his hands, but the weight had bent one arm at an unnatural angle. Still, he had it. I breathed a sigh of relief. Carl pulled the injector into the cage.
Oh, that's cute. So cute. Does she know what that means?
Like meat from a sausage grinder, static-head creatures began to pour out of the small screens. The ones that weren't high enough simply fell into the long dark, but those that were grabbed onto the catwalk. It swung with each creature that grabbed on. They climbed over the railing, flopping onto the floor, then rose back up to face me.
Carl!
I called warily. He was fiddling with the injector and said nothing. The static creatures wandered towards me. With the stun rod, I knocked a couple down, but there was always more.
Hurry!
Carl held the injector out of the cage. It had a blinking light on it now. As the static creatures swarmed me, he threw the device with his uninjured arm. It flew in an arc just strong enough to crash heavily into the massive screen. Fred wailed. Electricity jumped from the injector like an overcharged static ball, arcing brightly through the big screen and then to the small screens, then to the creatures. I crouched and covered my head.
That tickles.
Fred called over shattering glass. His voice cut and bounced in glitchy leaps. The whole world seemed to shake as Fred spasmed. The darkness was taking on an odd, bright quality. It seemed to flicker, like lights dashing on and off, until I blinked. The whole room was white now, both from bright light and white walls all around us, purely cubic, with a giant control console of some kind in the center that went floor to ceiling. A spinning core sat at the center of the machine. A large room to be certain, but there was no more endless dark. I was standing on a floor. Carl's cage was gone. The catwalk I had climbed onto was gone. No screens, no city, no sewers, no monsters. Bolts of electricity continued to jump this way and that, sparking dangerously next to me like the edges of a hurricane. I dashed against the buffeting wind to Carl. "Carl, your arm!"
Listen to me,
he said, cradling his broken arm.
"This is the mainframe. There's an encased button on the console. Can't miss it. I always install a back door. It can only be pressed while the injector is in effect."
"You installed it? You made EE?" He didn't answer, but his guilty eyes said it all.
"We can talk about this when we get out of here. Go now, before it gets any worse."
"Why should I trust you after all of this?" Carl looked away. He tried to think, or rather, as much as you could in this chaos.
"I know I haven't been the easiest to deal with. It's only because I was worried what you'd think. I hated you because my sin was greater. Do this last favor and we can escape."
I studied him. His arm was bent back. I was the only one who could do this. "Okay." I shielded my eyes and rushed towards the console. Lightning bounced around me as the strange wind spun. I wove left and right. When I reached the console, I desperately searched for some kind of encased button. There were controls of all kinds, including a keyboard and mouse wheel. I didn't find what I was looking for until I looked underneath it. On the underside was a glass-covered button, something that read "Injector Shutdown." I pulled at the case, but it was no use. There was a lock on it. Without hesitation, I pulled out the stun rod and began bashing the butt end against the lock. The latch was coming loose.
Not so fast, Elaine. Time for one last round."
Silence. The room went blank. No sound, no sights, just emptiness. Everything around me was different. The console was gone. The storm was gone. Carl was gone. Disoriented again. Just as quickly as it had changed, though, the strange emptiness soon shifted. Like paint rolling down the walls, a new room came together, piece by piece, until I recognized where I was. A terrible, familiar place. The garage doors clanged shut behind me. I sat there in my car, not wanting to leave. I stepped out of my car and eyed the other vehicle in the garage. A red sports car. My key opened the interior door. I stepped inside warily, like going into a no. The air always felt like this, or it has for a long time now. Tense and fragile, like a precarious stack of glass that only needed an offensive breeze before it came crashing down. It had been piling up quite some time.
An interesting 3 from Johnson, though I'm not sure how he expects to get the ball out of that corner.
My husband was planted where he usually was, on the couch, watching sports, all in a cave of closed curtains. By the stagnant look of things in the room, I guessed he still... I sighed and tossed my keys onto the entry table. I paused. Something caused me to feel, but I focused as hard as I could on that feeling. This already happened. There was only one way to break out of it. I knew now. I had to do something different. "Art?" I said towards the couch. I walked over carefully. The crowd on the TV. Art's head was laid back, face slack, but his eyes were turned painfully down at the TV. He drooled, pulsing strangely where he sat. When I took a fearful step away, I knocked over a pile of empty beer cans. Art's head bent sharply, unnaturally far to look at me. His eyes were hollow, pupils of static. Skin pale, his flesh seemed to melt down on one side. "Get away," he said in a broken voice. "Do you still want me?" He lurched up suddenly from the couch, stumbling like a child first learning to walk. I took further steps back. All I could do was stare in horror as the monster imitating my husband crept closer. A drip of drool, a foot sliding uselessly on carpet, an eye lopsided, loose from the skull. The kitchen table stopped my retreat dead. A pile of dishes there clattered to the floor in a symphony of breakage. Soon, Art was only inches away from me. "Do you still love me?" Broken jaw, rancid breath, a melting body that barely held together. I don't know why, but shakily, my voice uttered a single word. "No." Like lightning, he jerked forward. Arms up, he grabbed me around the neck. I struggled and hit his sides, pushing as I fell, but it was no use. I grabbed a piece of the broken glass on the floor and slashed at him. His blood was static.
His quarterback days might be far behind him, but that foundational muscle is still there,
Fred said.
Why do you think he likes football so much? It reminds him of the good old days.
My husband dragged me across the floor, slowly out of the kitchen, as the digital voice of Fred cackled. The hum of static seemed to float around the room like clouds of flies. The closer I was forced to the TV, the more I could make out a terrible shape there. A face made of static was pulling away from the screen, like one of those stupid haunted house gags. An actor pushing their hand through a spandex wall to reach for you. It almost made me join his laughter.
Join us, Elaine. Join your husband and meld with us. Join Miss Jensen, Bobby Dixon, Jack, all of them. Though I'm afraid Carl has his own ideas.
Figures emerged from the darkness. Shadowed, smiling faces, static ghosts of each person I recognized. Jack, Bobby, Miss Jensen. They watched with glee as Art dragged me along.
There is no pain in my world. There is no sadness or strife or worry. Only a sweet, cloudy sleep and a place to forever wander. Join us, Elaine. You will have paid your penance now. Join us.
I screamed. Art stopped only to shove the couch out of his way. I fell to my knees as he pushed me forward, a hand against my head towards the TV screen, towards EE. The static head opened its mouth as if to bite.
Join us. Join us. Join EE.
The static was sharp, distorting, and so painful I couldn't bear it. Frostbite before sleep, the last bubble before drowning. Eye contact with the driver of the car you're about to collide with. Just one more moment. Just one more ounce of the cold, and I could finally be free.
Authorities have taken Art Edwards into custody. He is currently considered the prime suspect in his wife, Elaine Edwards' disappearance. Our reporter outside of the house at the time mentioned that he did not appear to resist arrest.
I wanted to give up. I felt myself letting go, but I simply couldn't. No. The animal inside me, inside of us all, refused to be swayed. Refused to be forced. Carl needed my help. I was the only one that could save him. With a cry and last shred of effort, I grabbed my husband's collar and dropped my weight down, causing his force to throw himself forward instead. I heard a cracking crash as the face bit down on him instead of me. Static blood showered. Pulled out the stun rod. The face of Static stared in an uncharacteristic expression of fear. I shoved the stun rod onto the Static head. It cried out in a sound that could have been distorted laughter, could have been the clapping of a crowd. An overplayed theme song. The figures around me jolted with ee, and the room began to flash. The house was melting away. The darkness was drifting. The room grew brighter, brighter, until only that white, cubic chamber remained. Something felt different this time. In my phantom struggle, it seemed I had broken open the case. My hand was pressed onto the injector shutdown. The realization came back. Something within me felt oddly different still. Almost like a piece of the puzzle was missing. Red sirens started to blare around me. That strange core of the mainframe spun faster.
Don't you understand?
Fred's voice strained.
Carl Alley-Brow is selfish. Always has been and always will be. You'll find him again and again and again, and he'll use another like you.
Carl was gone from his previous spot, having moved far already, broken arm flailing at his side. He was going towards the back of the room where I saw a set of elevator doors drifting open.
The queen can't leave the hive, but she has her own.
Carl looked back at me. We simply stared at each other, which, the longer we did, I realized the truth. He was leaving me. He stepped inside of the elevator. I made it there, but when I went to step inside myself, something stopped me. Something invisible pushed me back. I struck it with my hand, but it was only met with static clouds. There seemed to be something in his eye that said he was sorry, but he wasn't that sorry. I could see right through him. I'm sorry, Elaine. You can't leave now. Not ever. That's what it means to inject yourself here.
What did you do to me?
I held my throat. Was that my voice? The elevator doors shifted. I'm sorry, Elaine. I can't stay here, but someone has to. The doors closed. A heavy sound burst from behind me. The core popped, causing the sound of clashing machinery before clambering to a halt. The mainframe went dark. The lightning stopped. The explosions stopped. The mainframe was left in one piece, but now with a different master. The room cut to darkness. It was only me there now. No monsters, no adversaries. Just crumbling bits of ceiling. Just that dark weight on my shoulders. I thought I could hear a voice. Something tickling at the back of my spine. It was all going to be okay, it said. There was a way out. The only way. A single light blinked on. It was on the console itself. I found myself walking through the dark, towards that little light. I stared at it. One of the screens there read, "Begin new process." An underscore blinked after, as if waiting for my typed response. That small voice told me to do it, told me that I could become what I had once feared, that there was a way to change all of this. There was one thought that repeated over and over in my mind, one word, and it urged me to continue on. I knew now. There was only one thing that ever mattered. How could I forget? Revenge. Welcome home, Elaine. I'd find him again. I'd become his fear. He deserves it. All of it. There is no escape. Not for me and not for him. There was only one answer I could ever give. Begin new process. Yes. Thank you for listening to Whisperwood Stories. If you enjoyed, don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe down below. Do you have a story that you'd like me to read here? Consider commenting or sending it to whisperwoodsubmissions@gmail.com. The story in this video was read with the author's permission. Me! Thank you again for listening, and be sure to check below where you can read the story as well. Want to support me? Check the links below where you can leave a tip if you wish. And remember, don't let the shadows get too close. Good night.